Seth, it is good to talk to you. Sorry it's taken so long. I wanted to give you a full response because I find it quite an interesting question. Given that I'm probably going to post this in the Zoom channel, let me explain what Seth's question is and what my view is. So Seth asked, what's wrong with having the Ten Commandments in schools? I have heard from BYU Idaho faculty that that would be a violation, a gross violation of church and state. And I just have a hard time with that. This is Seth still speaking. Seth kind of says, I just don't understand. It's not a particularly Christian thing. It's not specific to one religion. So why can't we have something that pushes all of us to be better? Some kind of script that we follow that could help all of us. And I really like that. I find that a really compelling question. Let me start with this idea of separation of church and state, because I have some issues with the way that we conceive of it today and the way that I think we could better approach it in the future. The term separation of church and state was not in the Constitution. This is one of those things where every once in a while people will find, a good saying, like a penny saved is a penny earned. And they'll say, yeah, well, the Bible teaches that a penny saved is a penny earned. No, that wasn't the Bible at all. And we just kind of attribute it to books or documents that seem to fit our purposes rather than that are actually true. So the separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. It is not in the writings of the Founding Fathers. It is not in any of the primary texts. It's not in the Federalist Papers. It is in a letter, I believe, from Thomas Jefferson to somebody else, I can't remember who it is, where he, being much more secularist, right, and he, to this day, is famous in France. France has a very secular regime, to the point of not just downplaying religion, but really, religion should be removed from the public square. I think it's laïcité is the French term, and I'm probably butchering the French. But basically, it's not separation of church and state. It's the state needs to be, the church is not fit to be engaging in public discussion of these kinds of things. You can have your religion, but it better not come into the public square, or we will ask it to leave. And that is kind of the current French paradigm, and has been for quite a while. So that is kind of what he was arguing. Now I want to emphasize that is one argument among many. I think a much fairer argument to represent the Founding Fathers, whether or not we want to follow them is a different question, but everybody seems to always appeal to, well, separation of church and state. And when you say, well, why does that matter? Well, the Founding Fathers. Oh, okay. So if the Founding Fathers matter to you, let's ask, did the Founding Fathers want a state religion? No, I agree, they did not. They were very, very leery of this. Did the Founding Fathers want laïcité? This idea of there should be no religion in the public square. That is a private matter that you were allowed. We will allow you to worship privately, but you don't get to talk about it in public. And the answer is no, that's hogwash. Most of the Founding Fathers believed in a religious, a Christian, and a moral nation. Many of them wrote that it doesn't matter how hard they work to build a beautiful state, a perfect republic, if there aren't a moral and religious people to keep it safe and keep it, functioning the right way. I think one of my favorite writings on this basically says that the republic was framed for a moral people, and no other people will be sufficient, no matter how well designed the republic is. A moral and a religious people, and it ties those two together. Okay, so in the first place, if we're going to appeal to this idea of separation of church and state, I think we need to understand it a little bit better. It was one view, it was Thomas Jefferson's view. He is much more secular than many of the other Founding Fathers. I do not suggest that we should follow the Founding Fathers on all things, but most of the people who will happily say separation of church and state are in fact appealing to the Founding Fathers, and as soon as I push them, they go, well, the Founding Fathers don't matter that much anyway. Great, then let's dispense with the term separation of church and state unless there is some reason why you believe it should exist. So that's point number one. Point number two, the purpose of public schools is to create a common vision, a common culture, and a common meaning of what it means to be an American. And that fundamentally has to mean a common set of virtues and values. And so I think the Ten Commandments are awesome. I think the Ten Commandments should be taught in every school. And we should explain why. And we should explicitly explain that our Judeo-Christian heritage, we need to be careful with that word, by the way, because it's kind of just a way of saying our Christian heritage, but it feels more inclusive. I don't love that term. A friend of mine wrote an article that kind of opened my eyes to this, where she said, listen, you can call things Judeo-Christian, but most of the time what we're doing is excluding the Muslims, right? So let's find a term that also includes our Muslim brothers and sisters. And as it turns out, our Muslim brothers and sisters have the same beliefs on the Ten Commandments. There's not much difference between their Ten Commandments and my Ten Commandments and my Catholic friends' Ten Commandments. There are slight differences, but we're all Abrahamic faiths. And that's a wonderful bedrock foundation to say there are things that differentiate us, sure. But most of us are very on board with don't steal, don't kill, don't cheat on your spouse. And those are the kinds of values that I think are great for America today. The idea that that violates church and state, I just fundamentally disagree with. Let me go further. Over the last 10 years, we've had what many sociologists have called the Great Awakening, right? The coming of a certain brand of left-leaning, or I guess I should say radical left, progressive mainstreaming of views. So what used to be very, very hard left views have now shifted and become mainstream left views on race and identity and a lot of other stuff. Now, I actually think there's some good in those. I am not anti-woke. I'm just kind of non-woke. I think there's a lot in them. Equity and a lot of focus on the poorest and how race can impact people that is really worth talking about more. And so I'm not super opposed to all of that. But what was shocking to me was how quickly colleges, high schools, universities became embroiled deeply in this conversation of, well, obviously the moral thing is to address equity issues at the level of schools or universities. I remember when I was teaching, we had a walkout that was organized by teachers. And we all claimed it was organized by students, and it was ridiculous because it wasn't organized by students. It was organized by teachers. And again, the premise of a walkout is that you leave class to stick it to the man. When the teacher is the one saying, we're all going to walk out tomorrow at 2:00, and the students who don't feel like walking out, who say, well, I just kind of want to learn how to do math, then have to come to me and say, will I get punished if I decide not to go? There was a teacher at my school who cornered a boy and basically said, this is important. You need to do this. I know you don't think you need to, but this is important to our people. She's black, her student is black. And it felt very weird to me that a public school teacher was pressuring a public school student to participate in a public protest on the guise of morality. Now, I want to emphasize that this is kind of, to me, the problem that I have with we have a separation of church and state. Okay, but as soon as it's a non-religious religion, then it's fine. It's no problem. It's only when we talk about God that it's an issue. And so when it's radical, progressive, maybe it's not so radical. Maybe when it's left-wing politics, then we say, well, that's not politics. That's just being a good person. Right, that's the problem. That's what everybody thinks. That's why Christians say it's not right-wing politics. It's just be faithful to your spouse. And I just object fundamentally to that characterization. I think everything is politics, and politics is morality at its most basic. That is how we tick. And so I have issue with that. So point number one, separation of church and state probably doesn't mean what you think it means. Number two, a common culture of values is really, really a good idea for all of us. And I think could do a lot of good in the world today. Point number three, people who say they don't want a common set of morals, typically what they mean is I want one, but it should be my morals. And I only object when other people get in the way and start spouting their values. So, number 4, I actually think that we should teach religions in schools. I feel very strongly about this. I agree with Dan Dennett, although he was saying it for the opposite purpose. He was an atheist. I really like Dan Dennett. He seems like the kind of atheist that I would have just been really good friends with, and I would love to. I wish he had just passed away. He was a philosopher. Brilliant mind. I mean, just brilliant and kind and thoughtful. And every time I hear him talk, I go, that's very thoughtful. And one of the things that he really objected to, that I agree with, is this idea that you have to, in order to be moral, you have to believe in God. And if you don't believe in God, you can't be moral. And I am with him on this. I know too many good atheists who don't, because they see the facts in front of them, they look around and say, I can't see God. Does that mean that I have no purpose, that I can't be a good person? And I just object to that. And here's the rub, right? So I wish that we would teach all religions in schools. Dan Dennett did it because he thought if we teach all religions in schools, kids will start to realize, oh, there's more religions out there. And they might start to go, well, which one is right? And they might ask some questions, and they might realize that religions have changed over time in the same way that natural selection changes people. And so his idea was it would protect people from religion. Well, I find it to be the exact opposite. I think everybody would look at this and go, wow, religion is a natural phenomenon. It crops up everywhere. People need it. They do better when they live by it. We need communities. We need morality. Maybe there's something to this. So I would love to see religion taught in public schools. I would not love, and this is where Dan Dennett and I agree quite fiercely, most of the people who root for putting the Ten Commandments in schools are rooting for it as a symbol of Christian nationalism. They're not trying to be inclusive with Judaism and Islam. They are trying to say this is the one and only way that we can possibly, this is a way to create more symbols in our faith, in our country, and link them together. And I just take issue with that. I take issue with a sculpture of the Savior, whom I adore and worship, and who is a huge part of my faith, being in public schools, unless they are alongside the Prophet Muhammad, unless they are alongside symbols of Judaism. But I do believe that we should allow space for some of those symbols. I love what the Senate does. They open every day with prayer in the Senate from a different religious person. And that makes sense to me. I like that. I think we could do the same in public schools. I think we could actually, the best ideal would be is if we actually sat down and had the hard conversation about what are the morals that make up America. And no one will fit all of them. But I'll give you a specific example. I think everybody right now kind of agrees that Hamas is not good people, right? And I shouldn't say people, because the people, it's complicated, right? Their ideologies are murderous. I think most people would actually agree with that, probably on the order of 80, 90%. And so my question is, where do we draw the line? Where do we say, this is an American value, this is not an American value? And I would love to go back to, hey, parenting your kids, that's an American value. We need you to be the best parent you can be. I would love to go back to, you don't cheat on your spouse, because that's important. I would love to go back to a lot of those virtues and values. The Ten Commandments are great. I think for some people they're not resonant because it's not part of their faith, and they then feel excluded. And I think we need to be wary of that. At the same time, I think there are, what would be even better is to say, what do we believe here? And what could we make work? And that is a really interesting question to me of, maybe we put Hammurabi's code up. Anyway, that's the long and short of my views. I think the Ten Commandments are good. I think a lot of the people who are rooting for them are actually just Christian nationalists in disguise. They want the United States to embrace Christianity specifically and make it the state religion, and I'm not up for that. I am a Christian in most possible ways, but I am very well aware that I might not be on the ins, I might be on the outs if those people got power. And I've been to those places. I've been to places in the South where people are holding prayer meetings and they find out that you're not a Christian, and they go, I don't. You claim to be a Christian, but you believe in that other Jesus. And it's like, no, I believe in the same Jesus. We just have differences. I don't believe in the Trinity. Oh, well, then you're not going to heaven. And here we are. Do I want those people controlling the state? No, not really. So separation church and state? No, I want a religious United States, but I want a varied and diverse religious United States. So hopefully that answer gives you some thought.